Hi everyone, my name's Nathan, I'm from Create, and I'm making this short video to answer a few of the questions that we've had about our quadcopter kits and talk about all the fine details to do with all the features and all the extras that we're providing with the kits. So, just before I go into all the kits and everything that we're providing in them, I'm just going to quickly clarify what's not provided in the kits. So this quadcopter that you see in front of me is my quadcopter. It is based pretty much exactly off what is provided in the kits with a few small modifications. So here I have some 3D printed components such as the hood, the attachment that holds the battery on the bottom, the motor mounts, pretty much everything that you see that's white here that we designed ourselves, as well as the aluminium tube landing gear and the attachments that hold those landing gear in place. We needed to elevate this quadcopter a bit higher so that we could fit a camera underneath. Otherwise, what you do get in the kits are different landing gear and different motor mounts, both of which work fine, except if you want a camera underneath. So yes, those were the modifications we made. But otherwise, everything that you need to fly autonomously comes with kits. So in the kits, we have obviously underneath the hood the flight board, which includes onboard a barometer, 6-axis accelerometer and gyroscope, a 3-axis magnetometer. So it is a really sort of comprehensive integrated flight board that runs the software that we need to do, which is Megapirate software that interacts with ArduPilot to get this thing in the air. Otherwise, what else do we have? We have the motors and props that come with the kit. So the motors are, I believe, 850 kV outrunners that are 12-volt motors that they're designed for 3-cell LiPo batteries. So those provide approximately 1.5 kilos of thrust each, which gives this quadcopter an awesome amount of power and acceleration considering that it weighs only about 1 kilo. So how much can you add to this quadcopter? What's the payload you can add to this thing? You want really at least a 2-to-1 kind of lift to mass ratio. So I'd suggest that you could comfortably add up to 2 kilos of extra weight on top of what this quadcopter already weighs before you see a significant decrease in flight performance or it not being able to adequately go off the ground. 2 kilos is more than enough to carry, say, a quadcopter camera stabilization system or any other sort of payload that you want for a quadcopter this kind of size. In terms of what else is provided on this kit, so we've got the chassis, which is a lightweight but really strong and balances with easy to put together and easy to replace individual components if individual components break in an accident. That's the chassis that we're providing. It is 600 millimeters from 525 millimeters rather from motor to motor. Or is it 600? Either way, it's quite a sizable chassis and one that is able to fit in the motors with their 11-inch props that we've provided. Also as a feature of this chassis is that the arms can be folded so that these arms can be made parallel, which can provide easy storage and portability if you, say, need to put it in some kind of carry case or backpack. Otherwise, it is rather simple to disassemble and reassemble this chassis. All it is held by are essentially a couple of bolts at key points to hold the arms and silicon sort of PCB material chassis plates in place. That's the main mechanics of what is provided. In terms of the electrics, we have a battery down the bottom here, which I have similar type somewhere here. It's not the exact same type as this, but it is a 2200 milliamp hour lithium polymer 3-cell battery. Let's see if I can actually pull this particular battery out. of itself. So that's what it looks like. That provides approximately anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes of flight time, depending on what you're carrying and how aggressive you're flying. These batteries can be doubled or tripled or even quadrupled up to provide even longer flight times without actually adding that much weight to this quadcopter, because one of these batteries only weighs really approximately 150 grams. In terms of their specs, it's a 20C discharge. So 20C means the discharge rate multiplier. When you times that by 2200 milliamp hours, you are getting between 80 and 90 amps that can come out of this battery without damaging the battery, which is really, really good, because considering these motors, that amount of power is what you need to really give this quadcopter maximum thrust. So that's the battery. They're underneath the quadcopter chassis here. You can't really see it, but we have a quad ESC, which is electronic speed controller, a 4-in-1 electronic speed controller, which is capable of sending 30 amps of 3-phase DC, which is what you need to run these brushless motors. That is the most sort of efficient type of DC motor. 30 amps to each motor, as in up to 120 amps total. It is very rare that, or strange that you would be sending absolute maximum power to all 4 motors. We found that really even 50% power to these 4 motors sends this quad absolutely flying places. So you won't ever get to 120 amps of draw, but the quad ESC can handle the power that needs to go to all 4 motors. And it's really compact, which means it nicely fits underneath the frame. It's only about an 80mm square and barely 12mm deep. So it fits compactly really nicely and allows us to run the wires for this frame through the arms and to the motors, which means that the airflow around these arms is kept to sort of minimal disturbance, which is good for its aerodynamic performance. Going on to the other components that we have with the kit all included, to give you that extra sort of autopilot control and on-the-go functionality. We have U-Block's Neo 6M GPS. It's the latest version that is coming with your kits, updated only about a month, 2 months ago. So this GPS provides a 3-dimensional fix with an accuracy approximately 1 to 2 meters. This GPS is able to get a really quick fix, integrate with the flight board to provide all those autopilot functionality, including flying via GPS waypoints that you can either pre-program into the quadcopter or update on the go via Mission Planner software, which we will teach you how to use in our workshops. Or if you're not doing GPS waypoints, you can do altitude hold with the GPS or with the onboard barometer, which has a really, really good resolution of approximately 2 centimeters, which is absolutely amazing. But then again, is dependent on weather and pressure changes. But yeah, that's the GPS. It works really, really well. Can get a fix within 2 seconds once you've got it up and running. This module here that we have I have got taped to the front of the arm, is one of the most important and functional modules on this quadcopter. It gives you a data link back to your laptop for up to 3 kilometers away. That's what we've tested, which is actually beyond its specs, but it's consistently reached that range. It's really an amazing thing, and it allows you to update those parameters, check the status of your quadcopter on the go, even when it's out of sight, and plot those GPS waypoints. So there's a corresponding module like this that comes with the kit that will plug via USB into your laptop. So we're almost done with what's on the quadcopter. In terms of the landing gear that I mentioned before, I realised I could have talked about that much. It provides about 100 millimeters of ground clearance, and it is spring-loaded. So the landing gear that comes with the kit, I'll just get what it looks like now, is this attached to the ends of the arms, and it is spring-loaded, and it provides sort of protection for the motors. If you do have a big accident and things on this chassis break, this quadcopter has had several of those accidents, and really I haven't replaced any of the components here. The only components I've had to replace are the motor mounts. The motors have been fine. These props break a lot on collision, but that's what you want. They're very, very cheap to replace. What we're saying is that we will stock all the basic sort of replacement components that you'll need in an accident, and we'll be giving them to you very cheaply, or in many cases for free. If you just come up to us and say, hey, I've broken a motor mount or a landing gear, can you give us one? We'll provide you a spare. Otherwise, we will provide you the ability to 3D print components. So these designs we have, opened up to the public. We think that this particular sort of motor mount design makes the performance of this quadcopter even better by providing extra rigidity between the motors and the chassis. So if you want a set of those, we can organise some for you, although expect, perhaps like a week between you asking us for them and them being ready to go. What else comes with this particular quadcopter kit? So attached to the battery, we have a current voltage monitor. So this can coordinate, can link up to the flight board and give you the current and voltage levels, supplied by your battery, which is really, really useful for checking, the life of the quadcopter, how long the battery's got to go before it powers down. There is onboard sort of functionality with the electronic speed controllers to ease off the throttle and eventually cut off when the voltage gets too low. So this battery will never be too discharged. You'll never see a situation where you discharge these batteries too much. As some of you may know, lithium batteries, if you discharge them beyond what they're rated for, you can actually just completely destroy the battery. This has onboard sort of protections to stop that from happening, so that will never happen. The current voltage monitor will be providing you with this. It can be wired up quite easily. And this yellow wire here I've got is a 12 volt breakout for the battery. So when I've got things with extras which I'll be talking about, which need to be powered from like 9 to 12 volts, this is the thing that will do it. The electronic speed controllers, I forgot to mention before, also provide the power to your flight boards. So they provide a separate regulated power supply to power the flight board, which is really, really good. Anyway, all of this is included in your kit, and the receiver and controller. This is another thing that makes this kit amazing value. Included in your kit, this is a 6-channel, 2.4 gigahertz controller. People always ask me, what range do you get out of these things? And I tell them, look, it's not necessarily dependent on this remote, because you can fly this quadcopter with this remote further than you can see. So really, it's the limit of what you can see when you're controlling this thing. Alternatively, it's the limit of what you're willing to let go in terms of autopilot capabilities. So there are settings when this is out of range, the quadcopter autopilot to take over, or you can send it on autopilot missions, disable those safety settings that make it return to home once you've lost contact with the remote. And come back to base. But essentially, this remote will give you up to 1 to 2 kilometers of controllability, which in reality is like way more than you need. But if you really wanted more controllability, you can actually update flight modes from your laptop via the Mission Planner software, and this has a range of up to 3 kilometers, as I said. And ultimately, via autopilot, if you connected which we don't have on, included functionality, but if you want to include a 3G board and update over Wi-Fi, you could control this quadcopter from, in theory, anywhere in Australia or in the world if you have that internet connection. But this 6-channel remote is great. So you have 4 channels in the sticks. So we've got thrust on the left and yaw on the left, and we've got pitch and roll on the right, the tilt over there. So that's 4 channels. By the way, all of these channels can be customized. So this remote is programmable, and it's what each of the sticks does in terms of sensitivity can all be customized through this LCD sort of display. There's a menu on board where you can go in and customize all the settings. So where are the other 2 channels? Well, you've got, I accidentally pulled that battery clip out. The only thing actually that reminds me, I'd say, is annoying about this remote is the amount of batteries it requires. It requires 8 AA's. You can go in and hack the regulator out of the remote and, you know, run it off a 2-cell LiPo. But with 8 AA's, we've been running these for 6 months and haven't had to replace the batteries yet, which is a great sort of credit to these remotes. So where are the other 2 channels? So we've got variable pots here, which are good for camera tilt control, or you can have switches for flicking between different flight modes, such as auto takeoff, auto land, flight GPS waypoints, you know, acro mode, stabilize mode, alt-hold mode. All the modes, or a lot of the modes, can be accessed with these buttons, and by configuring them in your mission planner, you can choose exactly what each of the buttons on this remote does. So this remote, with 1 to 2 kilometers of range, is really fantastic. It also comes, of course, with the receiver, which looks like this. So 6 channels plugged into your flight board pretty much directly, and it doesn't require too much configuration to get going with the onboard software. So, one more thing that comes with the kit, 2 and 3 cell simple LiPo charger. So this will charge your batteries in approximately 1 hour, maybe a bit longer, but it's great to have. It's a cheap solution and it does the trick. You can have, if you want to charge your batteries up faster or have more battery charging functionality, you can, you know, buy your own battery charger. But for cost, to keep the cost down, this is the one we provide you their kits, and we've been using it for ages and it does the job. Okay, so is that everything included in the kits? Yes, it is. We do provide all the wires as well, and the, you know, the bullets that need to secure the props down, or the bullets that need to connect the motors up. And what I want to emphasize with this is we step you through the entire process of building this quad from the ground up. So some of you may ask, you know, okay, are there any, you know, sort of hidden things that, you know, I'm going to need to spend to get this, you know, quadcopter going? And we'd say that really the only thing which you need are some simple tools, such as some Allen keys. It's good to have an imperial and a metric set, but they can be picked up for $5 or so a set at Bunnings. A couple of screwdrivers and some pliers would be nice. When you need to, you do need to solder some things up. If you don't know how to solder, we can solder some things up for you. It's great to learn though. If you have a soldering station at home, then that comes in handy. If you don't, you might consider getting one, or you can do the soldering in our workshops at uni. So that's essentially what you need to put the quad together. Alright, so that's all about the kits. So this, everything I've just described, we're providing for $350, which is a fantastic price. I can't emphasize enough in terms of this kind of kit, this size, this power, this autopilot functionality, these sensors, and the extras such as the battery charger and the GPS and everything. You won't find a better price on anything. How do we keep the price down? We source everything in one go, we order in one go, and we have like multiple different suppliers overseas, such as from the States, from Asia, that we negotiate with to make sure that this happens. If you're sort of worried about the quality, don't be. But if anything, you know, is an issue, if you get a component that is faulty, we'll replace it, you know, for free, and that's a guarantee. If you have a faulty component that comes to you faulty, we'll replace it for free. All right. So that's all about the quadcopter. In terms of the extras that we're providing, and I really recommend that for some of you who are considering, oh, I'll get the base kit, but like are putting off the optional extras. Some of the extras, like the extra batteries, we will have in stock, but some of the extras we won't be, you know, ordering until we do the next quadcopter order. And, you know, again, we've provided them at a really low cost. So if you're ever considering, for example, doing any filming or any sort of like long distance flying where you're going to need a video feed or you want to record video, I'd suggest that you consider getting those extras. So I'll just talk about those extras now. So we've finally picked the FPV camera. So that's the first thing I'll talk about because it's you know, brand new addition to this kit. So we're providing this camera for the amazing price of $25, which is amazing. What is its resolution? It films at about it has a spec of 700 TPL. What does that mean? It's not like 720p. It's essentially the step down from that. So it's equivalent to 480p. So it's a decent enough resolution. It's like 170 degree field of view, which is perfect for FPV flying. So this camera is not for recording. It doesn't have the ability to record. That's why it looks like that. It has the ability to stream live with almost no latency. Like, what is the usefulness of that? You essentially, want to mount that to the front of your quadcopter, because if you're flying more than 50 meters, more than 100 meters away from you, you start to lose orientation of the quadcopter. It becomes very difficult to fly by a remote. If you have a video feed, and I've practiced this and it works, you can view from the quadcopter down on, say, an LCD monitor, or something like that. That means that you can know where the quadcopter is tilting, what direction it's facing, and you don't even have to look at the quadcopter as you pilot it. Piloting it does take practice, especially via FPV, but if you guys have ordered our mini quadcopters, this should be no problem. If you've ordered a big one, you may want to take it slow before you get to something like this, but I would still recommend picking one of these up because they're so useful. In conjunction with this camera, which is super light and mounted on the quadcopter, comes the FPV transmission system. So these come as a pair. So this is what you get for $110. So it is one of the more expensive items in sort of our kit, but it is really, really worth it. So in terms of the specs of these components, you have the receiver here and the transmitter here. I'll just start by talking about the whole system. So it's 5.8 gigahertz. So this is the only sort of FPV frequency system that's available, that's legal in Australia, other than 2.4 gigahertz, which you generally don't want to do because there's so many 2.4 gigahertz channels, and because FPV video transmission is such a complicated signal, you want that sort of frequency to be as clear as possible. So 5.8 gigahertz is definitely the way to go, like 100%. The other thing I'll say is that 5.8 provides a great bandwidth and good video transmission quality, so that's another advantage of 5.8. The receiver has up to, I believe, 8 different channels. So that's a handy feature of this receiver. Now, this receiver via RCA will plug into a monitor that you have. Be aware that this won't, plug straight into your laptop and give you a video feed. Generally, video input into laptops is a complicated process. You can get a RCA to USB capture card kind of system and get that happening, or you can get a really cheap sort of portable LCD display system, or you can hook it up to the TV in your lounge room and fly your quadcopter from the comfort of your couch. But that's the receiver. All it does is receive the signal and convert it to RCA, and that's all it needs to do. The better stuff, the sort of more interesting stuff is happening in the transmitter. So this is a 1000 milliwatt transmitter, so 1 watt of power, and it provides video out at 5.8 gigahertz from this camera or whatever other camera has a single video out kind of line. I believe actually it may also do composite video, but this camera is just single line video. I haven't tested this device with composite video, but I've seen it able to be done. And this is sort of a great module to have around. It's the Bosscam 5.8 gigahertz 1000 milliwatt model. So in terms of what kind of range you get out of this thing, line of sight, you're looking at around up to 10 kilometers, which is amazing. Now, why is it that we provide, this massive sort of video transmission range when the RF control can only, have a range of about, 1500 meters or so? Well, it's because, unfortunately, one of the disadvantages with 5.8 gigahertz, which I mentioned before is the best sort of frequency to be transmitting FPV at in Sydney or Australia, is that it does get absorbed by things like buildings. It doesn't have amazing penetrating power. It is reasonable, but that's why we've given it the sort of chosen the spec of the extra boost in power to make sure, you know, that if your quad like goes around the corner, you don't lose contact. Generally, that extra power means that you'll be able to fly your quad and get that live video feed to the range that this remote will be in contact with your quad. So this 1 watt transmitter runs off 12 volts. In terms of, you know, people were wondering, you know, oh, does this reduce battery life? In terms of power consumption, no, not really at all. If you consider like how much is going through these motors, which is, you know, like up to sort of 80, 90 amps at 12 volts, that's if you do the maths, or at like, let's talk about a hover, not even at like full thrust. A hover about 25 or 30 amps. 30 amps at 12 volts, you know, 300 to 400 watts, right? So 1 watt, you're adding like less than like 1% of the sort of power consumption of the rest of the device, quadcopter. But what I would say is that, you know, it adds a little bit of weight, and so does, you know, this kind of system adds weight. That's probably what's going to reduce your flight time more, but this thing is really, really light. So I would say that these two things, to get video streaming back from your quadcopter, really don't, you know, like weigh it down or take battery life out at all. The only concern I'd have is that, you know, you got to find somewhere to put it on the quadcopter. But what I did was I just like stuck it to the top, and that was completely adequate, and it worked fine. So that's the FPV system. So I'd say if you're thinking about getting the transmitter and receiver, get this camera as well. They go really well together, although I've made them separate for the reason that you can do FPV from another camera that you own, such as a GoPro. So leads me on to the other extra that we have. So the final extra I'll be talking about today is this camera stabilizer. Now this thing is got to be my favourite part of this entire quadcopter kit. In terms of what exactly you get when you buy one of our camera gimbal options, the great thing about this is it comes with the motors, it comes with the controller, and it comes with the sensor. It's its own integrated unit. It only needs power to power the motors and the controller and everything. Obviously, we're not providing a GoPro or a camera with this. It's up to you what kind of camera you can get. It doesn't just have to be a GoPro. Of course, GoPros are rather expensive. You can spend $90 to $100 on cheap GoPro-sized sort of knockoff, even at somewhere like Dick Smith or anywhere online, and get recording that way. In terms of the videos that you've seen online, all the filming has been done with something like this on board. So when you notice how stable the camera is when the quadcopter's doing sort of things like that, that's because of this brushless stabilizing system, which I think is absolutely fantastic. What I've done here is how to mount it to your quadcopter. I've included a 3D printed part which actually slides and clips into the 3D printed attachment that I've designed for this quadcopter. Again, if you want this particular attachment, you can get us to 3D print it for you. But yeah, so it fits in really nicely, so I can choose to take the camera on or put it or take it off for depending on what I'm doing during the flight. So yeah, that's the entire system. So just a reminder, Quadcopter Kits close. The sale closes not tomorrow, but Sunday the 20th, so whenever you're watching this video, Sunday the 20th of April is the closing date. We won't be doing this again until second semester. If you do have any questions about anything I've just talked about in terms of like the capabilities of this quadcopter, feel free to email or post a question on Facebook. We'll answer it for you. But like in terms of how hard it is to get everything going, I'd say the hardest thing about quadcopters is actually learning how to fly one really well. So that's why I recommend like you pick up one of the few spare mini quadcopters we've got. If you haven't already, if you're getting this kit, because that will give you practice flying and that will save you crashes of more expensive sort of quadcopters later. But in terms of, you know, programming and setup and putting it together, firstly, if you have any concerns, we'll have lots of online resources and we'll be running free workshops to help everyone put these quadcopters together. As I've said, we did it last year, we've done it before, and it works great. It's really simple. It's just about essentially connecting all components, uploading the software, tuning the parameters, and we've got the tune parameters for these size quadcopters already, so even if you can't tune, we can give you those parameters, and that's probably what we'll do, so that your quadcopter is completely stable. And then it's up to you whatever customizations you want on your quadcopter, but it doesn't take too long to get this thing going. Realistically, for someone who's never built a quad before, it will probably take you about, you know, 2 weeks of on and off work, but once you get the hang of it, you know, fixing up a quadcopter and things like that really takes no effort at all. And for us who built one of these things before, we could, you know, take it from from completely disassembled with no software installed to completely functioning in probably a day or two without much trouble. So yeah, if you're thinking about getting a quadcopter, or you're considering, you know, oh, have I got time to work on it this semester, I still recommend you get one. Like, we didn't know how to build quadcopters not much more than you know, 10 months ago, and didn't know how to fly them, didn't know how to program them. Now that we do, it's been such a great experience, and it's one of the sort of premier experiences that Create Society provides to uni students. As far as I'm aware, there's no society which does this kind of stuff anywhere else across Australia. So yeah, if you want your own UAV, if you want to do sports photography, if you want to just do some hobby flying, if you want to investigate its photographic capabilities in terms of surveying, in terms of 3D mapping, if you're considering doing your thesis or anything related to this kind of stuff, get one of these. It's great fun and you won't be disappointed at all.